They are celebrating this. They are celebrating this violence committed against the white British because they are white British. And yet, and this is the important point, and yet, the ostensible right wing in this country did not take umbrage with that. They took umbrage with the chants of death to the IDF. Now, allow me to say, I don't think it is a good thing, of course, to chant death to the IDF, though I'm pretty sure that Israel's incredibly competent military, who have been waging their defensive war against Hamas, Hezbollah, and all of Iran's proxies for a couple of years now, are capable of defending themselves without British MPs getting on television and doing it for them. Now, if said MPs, like Danny Kruger, who went on Newsnight to condemn Bob Vylan for his antisemitism, but who at the Now and England conference last week joined Robert Toombs in being befuddled as to why Zoomers were asking questions about demographics, the hijacking of multiculturalism by sectarian Islamists, and the unlikelihood of mass-scale integration after mass immigration. Danny Kruger couldn't really define what an Englishman is, but was, and remains, very perturbed that people would like to see the state of Israel destroyed. Now, Israel's state is taking the side of its people. Danny, your job as a parliamentarian is to take our side. And you aren't, because you didn't bring up the chance of, heard you want your country back. No, you can't have that. The racial and ethnic vitriol directed at the English, platformed on the BBC, and yet most of the complaints about the BBC platforming Bob Vylan, most of the complaints about Bob Vylan himself, or themselves, they're a duo, not that anyone's going to go and listen to them now, most of the complaints revolve around their anti-Semitism and their contempt for Israel and the IDF. I would like to say two things on this. First of all, I don't think, despite the chants of from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, inshallah, I don't think that Bob Vylan has a deep and abiding understanding of the long and contentious situation in Israel, Gaza, and Palestine. I don't think he's an expert on Middle Eastern politics. I think Palestine has become the leftist omnicause because it is a vector for anti-white hatred and anti-Western hatred. This is why the Greens have so eagerly assimilated into this movement. It's why Greta Thunberg has gone from skipping school to complain about climate change to striking on her University of Stockholm campus wearing keffiyeh and getting deported from Israel as she joined some convoy to sail to Palestine across the Mediterranean. This is why the Green Party has been completely subsumed by Islamists, and their councillor, Mohsin Ali, who said that his victory was a win for Palestine and shouted Allahu Akbar, which I presume is Arabic for recycling, is now running to be leader after about a year of being a councillor. This is why the Islamists are in coalition with Queers for Palestine and sexual revolutionary liberals who would go from the top of a skyscraper to the pavement were they to spend any time in Palestine. A lot of the Palestinian liberation cause is just window dressing for anti-white hatred. And this is what Bob Vylan has done. Bob Vylan, I don't think, has a deep and complex understanding of the conflict in the Middle East. I think he just wouldn't shed a tear if the atrocities of October 7th that happened at a music festival much like Glastonbury were to be repeated and perpetrated against the indigenous white British. And we know Hamas would like to do that because, as the Iranians also, curse Britain as well, they believe the British are responsible for establishing the State of Israel by handing over the mandate of Palestine to create the state in 1948. And they also believe that they are responsible for toppling the former Iranian regime to install the Shah and try to create some sort of puppet government that then the Iranian Revolutionary Guard and the Ayatollahs took over in the 79 revolution. They blame Britain for a hell of a lot, and so they would like to perpetrate the same heinous crimes as they did against Israel in 2023 against Britain in the future, given half a chance. And our porous border is allowing Iranian sleeper cells and Afghani sex criminals to pour over and commit those abuses against our women and girls. And we've already seen those abuses happen, and our government took the side of the terrorists. I'm thinking, of course, of the 2017 Manchester Arena bombing, where Raiku, the Home Office unit, told the entire country, don't look back in anger, as the bodies of young girls lied on a mortician's slab and their poor parents had to identify them. And we've, of course, had the grooming gangs, which local councillors, police officers, politicians, and the media covered up for decades because of the race and particularly the religion as well of the perpetrators. So we have had similar abuses, as October 7th, perpetrated against the indigenous white British for a very long time. Our state has taken the side of the terrorists and the perpetrators. And now our right-wing ecosystem, the patriots in the media, are more concerned about speaking up in the defense of Israel than for Britain. And a lot of this is because we revolve around the gravity well, again, of the Second World War as a kind of negative foundation myth, as the European Union wrote in their proposing of a unified European history curriculum about a year or so ago. Which means that every European nation and America must do all it can to be an open society, as R.R. Reno has written about, Return of the Strong Gods. It must do all it can to basically avoid being Hitler. It's what Ralph Scholhammer says our elites tell themselves, like what would Jesus do? They go, what would Hitler do? And then do the opposite. And so they have to be pathologically open to anyone from anywhere coming into this country. They have to deny cultural differences. They can't put up any hard boundaries between people, place, preference, history, culture, because that's akin to racism, and the greatest sin now is to be a racist because the Nazis killed lots and lots of Jews and they did it because of racism. Whereas the state of Israel can be very concerned as a matter of national security about the homogeneity of its people, the dominance of its religion, its birth rates, its military defense. It can have a big, beautiful border wall. It can have a lot of things that we should envy and emulate. And that's not to say they have it at our expense, but I do think that is the core of a lot of antagonism towards Israel on the right. I personally am apathetic because, as Douglas Murray would say, I haven't been. But I do think noticing that contradiction between a sort of proud state that is a higher level of ethnic and religious consciousness over in the Middle East, for whom our politicians speak in the defense of. I mean, Nigel Farage once said, if the Jews are to survive as a race, we have to defend Israel. But he doesn't speak about that for the English.
Support of Israel and their right to defend themselves, but they have to do this. They simply have no option if they are to survive as a country and, frankly, in many ways, as a race in that part of the world.
He says that he's unbothered by demographic change. So does Richard Tice. So do a lot of Tory politicians who have facilitated these mass waves of immigration. And so when someone stands on the stage at the largest music festival in Britain and gloats about stealing the country from the native white British, they don't mention it as much as his comments wishing death upon the IDF. Again, they're bad. I don't want to see my Jewish friends mistreated while in this country. But if this, let's just say, if this pro-Palestinian regime is running the country, does have such a stranglehold over British political life, brings streets to a standstill every week and makes it unsafe for Jewish people, and as a politician, for some reason, your preoccupation is the continued security of the Jewish community in Britain rather than prioritizing the interests of the British host majority first and foremost, and then their friendly and aligned minorities secondarily. If you are chiefly concerned about the security and safety of Jews in Britain, wouldn't you be more worried about the fact that a pro-Palestine coalition is declaring that they own this country and that the state broadcaster is putting it out and subsidizing their performance? Wouldn't you be worried that thousands of middle-class professionals and civil servants are allowing him to crowd surf and cheering that on? Wouldn't you be worried that we're entirely occupied by a regime that chants songs that sound a hell of a lot like Kill the Boer from Julius Malema's rallies in South Africa, directed, yes, at Jews, but also the native white British population? Wouldn't you be worried about that? Because that would also secure the continued safety of Jews living in Britain. And it's just strange to me that we can only coach our concerns in those terms. Like, I think it's because the Second World War, again, acts as a kind of gravity well around which all of politics orbits. And I just want to say, guys, we can just say that the types like Bob Vylan, they hate white people. They really hate white people. Like, it's not much more complicated than that. They don't have an incredibly nuanced take on Palestinian liberation. They have a very surface level, skin deep hatred of white people. It's demented. It's evil. It's just as objectionable as some skinhead who wants to beat up a black person because of their skin color without knowing them properly. We can't just turn around and say that. We can just say, they're anti-white racists. We shouldn't have to put up with this. This man has declared his intent to act as a kind of ambassador for an insurgent occupying political force that wants to steal our country from us. And okay, if he doesn't consider himself a member of our national tribe because he's saying to us, heard you want your country back, and acts as if he is in possession of it and is vindictive towards us, then we can say, okay, take your pick of another country around the world. We're going to revoke your citizenship per the Shamima Begum precedent that was set by depriving her of her citizenship because it wasn't conducive to the public good, and we'll just send you there because we don't have to put up with it. Guys, we can just say that. Because what are they going to do? They're going to scream and they're going to cry and they're going to call you racist, and you just turn around and go, no, we don't have the same definition of that term. I don't agree with what you're saying. I think he's actually an anti-white racist. I think he really hates me. And I don't have to put up with this genocidal rhetoric, actually. I don't have to put up with someone gloating and expressing glee at the fact they've stolen my country from me. I don't have to do that. We don't have to. We don't have to coach our terms, our objections to this hatred of us and our way of life in purely defense of a foreign land, Israel. We don't have to express any hatred toward the Israelis. Again, I'm pretty apathetic on the entire conflict. I just simply like the precedent they set of defending their people and their country against jihadists, and I wish my state would do the same for me against the fifth columnists that are currently at Home Office, the perpetrators of the Pakistani grooming gangs, etc. We can just object to Bob Dylan on the grounds of he really, really hates the English and white people and would like to see them mistreated, banished from their own country. And we do not have to accept that as an inevitability. As David Betts said at an event at the Unheard Club on Tuesday, I had the privilege of talking with him, and he's a very insightful man, but he said, look, he doesn't want civil war, even though he's been warning about it repeatedly, and the reason he's been warning about it is to try and encourage our clod-eared elites to walk us back from the precipice of it. But he said, there really are only two options here. It's a binary choice. Either Britain ceases to be a nation with over 1,000 years of continuity. It ceases to be, as George Orwell said in The Lion and the Unicorn, a distinct group of people, a culture, a place that if you transported yourself back from 1948 to 1848, you would see they're the same civilization. Either it ceases to be that, or it doesn't. And I say we wage a political war of self-defense against the likes of Bob Vylan and all of those who agree with him and chant his insidious anti-white slogans. We ensure that that person does not ever feel like he owns our country before, in fact, he can credibly say that he does. Unfortunately, none of our ostensibly right-wing elite seem to be taking that position.